Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We are talking to Caroline of Barket Place, which I'm very excited to talk to because she's been a huge help to get Trainers for Rescues up and running. So thank you, Caroline, for all your help and for your guidance, because without you, this wouldn't have been launched. So I really appreciate that. And she will be presenting our 10th to 17th workshop, Trainers for Rescues. Caroline, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? So, I mean, I know you, but maybe not everybody knows you, and they should know you, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's been awesome to be a part of your journey on the kind of way to this launching. I'm super excited for you and for all of the amazing resources that are going to be available to both people who work in rescue and people who live with rescue dogs. It's just going to be an awesome event. So yeah, I'm Caroline, founder of Barket Place, certified.
You froze. Hello?
Are we good?
We're good now. Yay. Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
So you're Caroline of Barket Place.
Yeah, so Caroline of Barket Place, certified animal behaviorist, dog trainer, applied pharmacognosis for dogs, and real dog yoga instructor. So I run an online learning platform for pet parents to support their dogs, and we help take the stress out of the relationship that they have so that they can just get back to the important job of loving their dog.
Which I think is really important because, I mean, mindfulness is something we don't always think about with dogs. You know, it's something that when people think, okay, I'm going to bring a new dog home, I'm going to take them here, here, and here, and here. We don't consider being mindful.
Yeah, and I think mindfulness obviously covers such a broad range of topics, but at its key kind of core center, we're looking at being present in the moment, and we're looking at not judging things. So as pet parents, we often judge our own behavior that we have for our dogs, the dog's behavior that we're seeing in front of us. We get judged by external people, particularly if we have dogs that are a bit more challenging to live with. And we also tend to focus on all the things that we don't need to focus on, and look at your dog. They are the best teachers in being present in the moment. You know, they can sniff the same piece of ground every day and see it as something new, whereas we need constant sort of stimulation. And so it's really important that we think about how we can incorporate some of that into both our lives with our dogs, but also the work that we do with dogs too, just being a little bit more respectful of that relationship and not putting judgment on either end of the lead.
There's two really important points there I want to talk about. Number one is the judgment that caregivers, whether they're shelter staff or they are just dog guardians or cat guardians, who have animals that maybe have some behavioral concerns like reactivity or fearfulness. And there's a lot of people that are really judgmental of maybe the dog is barking when they see another person, or they see another dog, or the cat is really fearful going to the vet, which I think you and I have talked about in great detail. So for me, it's really important that we understand that that dog is struggling, and not to judge them. But another, so can you talk about that a bit more, about how caregivers feel and how the labeling is something that we should try to avoid, and judging as well?
So really interesting to use the word label there, because that's exactly what I was just going to say, is like we put labels onto our dogs or cats' behavior, and we might call them like that they are stubborn, that they're reactive, that they are a bit of a jerk, whatever it is that you kind of put onto those animals that you're living with. And not only do we kind of set ourselves up, I think, for failure in terms of moving on positively in our relationship with our dogs and cats, but it also kind of almost hinders their progress, because we are saying that they don't have an option to kind of get past it. We're sort of limiting the development that they can make by just saying that's just how they are. What we, you know, if we look at it as, you know, right now my dog finds it quite challenging to step outside the front door and see another dog. That's a much more realistic way to say, rather than say my dog is reactive at every dog it sees. You know, if we say right now this is what's going on and my dog is struggling with some big emotions, we need to support those and help move it forward. But we also need to look at ourselves, and we often feel judgment from other people. It can even be the person that you're living in your home with, you know, a partner or a family member. It could be, you know, that you're judging yourself, or you are in some of the really fun Facebook groups that can crop up with dog stuff where you feel judged by keyboard warriors that are online. So it's about making sure that you're looking at what really is the true situation. You know, what is it that your dog's struggling with right now, and what you're doing to support them. And if you're even considering that, then you're doing a pretty epic, awesome job as being a pet parent anyway. And I think writing down, we've over in our Canine Connection Club at Barket Place, we get people to write down positivity journals if they're feeling a bit low about their dog's progress, and just writing down or telling somebody else something awesome that your dog or cat did that day can be really helpful to just keep their kind of energy up when you're working through challenges with them.
Oh, I think it froze again. Did it freeze again?
It hasn't at my end, but
Oh, it could be on my side. We are having quite a lot of rain, and sometimes that affects generators that are nearby.
well, hopefully everybody heard what I just said.
Oh, they heard what you just said. Don't worry. But yeah, no, there's so many points I'm going to bring up with that, because I think this is really important topic, because I've been walking a dog who is reactive, and there's been some off leash people who have had their dogs off leash, and their dogs came and attacked the dog, and they got angry at me that the dog I was walking was barking at that dog, or that I was trying to hide and stop their dog from approaching my dog or the dog I was with. And so I think this is something that we, as other, we'll say, like, if I was a dog guardian of the off-leash dog, that's something I would, why am I getting judgmental when I should be having my dog on a leash or on a lead? And why am I yelling at the person who's trying to actually do something? And so it's kind of taking ourselves and taking a step back and saying, okay, what can I do to help the situation, whether I'm the person walking the dog or I'm the person who has a dog off lead? How can I help the situation be calmer? How can I be more mindful of the situation?
Yeah, and I think it's really hard because we don't know what we don't know or what we don't experience. And if you are the caregiver for an animal that finds the world super easy to navigate, and you know, just has a whale of a time every time they're off the leash, and you know, doesn't, you know, is quite happy to go up to any person, any dog or whatever, you can kind of be living in this blissful bubble. But it's hard because you don't know what somebody else is going through. And, you know, that person walking the other dog may have been working for months to try and help their dog feel so secure and safe when it goes outside. And just in that 5 seconds that you've let your dog approach them, you can have undone, you know, months of work. So it's really important that we, I think, generally we try and get the message out to all guardians of animals that they need to be aware that it's not just their relationship with their dog that's existing. There's a whole world around them, and different dogs have different needs, you know, which is why we have schemes like the yellow, I don't know if you have that over in Canada, like the yellow leash system, which is starting to grow here in the UK, but still it's not recognized enough by enough people, but it basically is a system where people have it on their collar or on their lead that says that their dog needs space, and it's kind of a signal for people to be respectful of that, hopefully.
And another point I wanted to talk about was you're discussing the mindfulness and being present in the moment, and how letting your dog sniff is such an important thing. And so, like, when I'm out with dogs, whether I'm training or I'm walking a dog, if people get very frustrated, their dog wants to sniff a spot, and I'm like, let your dog sniff. You know, and being mindful that it's not their walk, it's, you know, it's not our walk, it's their walk, you know. And so if your dog wants to sniff that same spot, well, that could be where every other dog has peed, you know, like it could be like the pee mail. And so this is something like we have to kind of step back and think about the importance of being mindful, and also the importance of rest and sleep, which is your topic presentation.
Absolutely. And I think it all kind of combines, because actually for our dogs who are walked in a more calm way and allowed that space to breathe and to sniff, like I call, like, you know, when dogs are scenting, like they're sniffing or searching for treats, or they're sniffing that pee mail, that's kind of like their own mindful breathing, because it actually slows and lowers their pulse rate. We've seen through studies, through dogfieldstudy.com, if you have a look at them, looking at the fact that dogs that were allowed to sniff more on walks meant that their cortisol, their stress hormone levels were lower. And that's something that also can be helped and improved via really good sleep and rest. And I think this is one thing I know from my work for years before I kind of got more into behavior and was working online through Barket Place, that I would work with a lot of puppy parents in person, and they didn't realize how important that sleep is for their dog's development. And we know that, you know, for young brains that are trying to grow and develop, it's really hard.
Yeah, so I think that's one thing that's really important, especially for puppies, is people don't know that puppies need to have 18 hours of sleep a day. And I think that's one thing, or when you're adopting a puppy or you're bringing it home or fostering a puppy, that you make sure your puppy has a lot of rest. And that's one thing that we forget, is whether you are a foster parent, a shelter, or adopted person, that, you know, everybody coming in and petting your puppy, because, you know, puppies are adorable, they're cute, they're cuddly, but they're also very tired. And when they get tired, they get very mouthy. And I know that you have a young daughter, and when she gets tired, she also gets very cranky too. And so kind of like for dogs, when they're getting cranky, that's when they start jumping and they start mouthing and they start having these overactive behaviors because they're overtired. And it's kind of like having a toddler who just can't communicate, so they melt down.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can be the same for older dogs coming from rescue, who have perhaps been living in a really high stress environment for quite a while, and it's going to take them quite a bit of time to come down from that. And if they're not allowed to have quality sleep and rest to kind of recover, it's part of their recuperation, then they're also going to be more cranky, more, or find it more difficult, or be more fearful in their new home environment.
And I want to also be mindful that when I'm saying cranky, it's not, we're not bringing a label, we're just being like, this dog is overtired. And so, or cats as well too. And so the shelters are extremely stressful environments, and that's one thing we tend to forget, either, especially when you're working, they kind of get desensitized as to how stressful it really is. We kind of think, okay, like, you know, we walk in, all the dogs are barking, the dogs are, you know, going for walks, and, you know, all these people are meeting the dogs. We don't consider the stress of that entire journey on the dog's nervous system, and how that raises all those hormones. And that's why sleep and rest is so important to them.
Definitely. And I think if we can't get, you know, good quality sleep, we can at least hopefully help facilitate a bit better rest for our dogs in rescue environments. There've been studies that show that, you know, things like our dogs taking a little break from the rescue environment, going into a foster home, even for just 1 or 2 days, can help bring their cortisol levels, that stress hormone levels down. And what's great is that although their stress levels go up, or return to a kind of a previous standing, they don't go higher when they return. So it's not that it's actually making them feel worse when they go back into the environment. What's happening is they're just getting a bit of a break from feeling so ramped up. It's like us wanting our weekends from work, you know? So yeah, it can be really good to put those sort of things into place in a rescue environment.
Well, that's what I was thinking. And like, you know, bringing these analogies of how we feel into how our dogs feel can really help us be more mindful of these dogs' behaviors. Because like you said, like when you have a really hard work week, you need to have your weekend to rest. And if you don't have a weekend to rest, if you're still, like, let's say you're going to get groceries, you're going to get the house cleaned, you're going to get all these events that you have to go to, you're not resting, your body is not recharging. And so for a dog who has been in the shelter environment for long periods of time, if they don't have that weekend away, or that time away, like, and they're going to be consistently stressed, which then creates chronic stress, which then can lead to physical conditions.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, things like gut health, pancreatitis, like all kinds of autoimmune issues, all sorts of things can be caused by chronic stress. Plus, we see a heightening of more heightened reactive type behaviors, because the higher level of stress a dog has, the less tolerance they have for smaller incidents or smaller sort of triggers, meeting smaller triggers. So it might be that previously a person walking past their kennel they could cope with, but when they've been into rescue for maybe 3 or 4 months, they find it so much harder to cope with, because they are just in that toxic level of arousal and stress.
Well, I think that's really important, is that, you know, we're going to be discussing through your presentation, through these challenges as well, to challenge people to take dogs away for the day. And so one thing that people here do is They will do day trips away. And so even if you can't do overnight stays or foster homes, you can still schedule a day away. And the day away could be walking the beach if you have a beach nearby, or going to these sniffy fields, sniff spots, which I don't know if you guys, I think that it's an international thing, so you can check their app. Even having these small individual, not group sessions can give that dog just a little bit of time for their stress hormones to decrease.
Yeah, and they may even find just a ride in the car, if they're comfortable in cars, just that is enough for them to be able to then have a really good long sleep. And so, yeah, there's so much to be taken from having just a little bit of detachment from the rescue center. But if that's something that's not possible, it's really hard to facilitate. There are also some small things that we can do in the facility to help improve the rest and sleep of the dogs that are there. And that's something I'll also talk about in the presentation.
Oh, I'm very excited about that, because I think that's something that we have to consider, that rescues and shelters, shelters and rescues maybe don't have all the facilities or the capabilities that we would like them to, or they'd like to have, because maybe they're like, we want to do these day trips, we want to do the foster parents, we want to do sleepovers, but we don't have the capacity, we don't have the volunteer availability because of COVID, and life has changed, and inflation, and all these worries that people are having. Maybe their volunteership is down, so that, you know, that having something that they can directly apply in the shelter would be fantastic.
And there could also be some dogs or cats that just aren't quite at the place in their journey that they could be taken out of the rescue, because it wouldn't be safe for anybody involved. But we can still help them to decrease their stress through certain different small changes that can be made, which then hopefully will help them on that journey towards rehabilitation, to be able to then have relationships with new people.
As per usual, I'm very happy you brought up cats. I might have a little bias there, but I kind of think that people don't know that when cats are in chronic stress, they can develop feline idiopathic cytosis, or FIC, and they can develop respiratory diseases. And so a lot of cats in shelter environments or in stressful environments, even it could be at home if they're not properly introduced to the dog, will develop these respiratory diseases or other diseases as well too, because of the chronic stress. And that's why having rest and sleep is so important, because if you are introducing a dog and a cat and you don't have time for that dog and cat to rest, if you're just like, okay, game on, that cat is going to be in chronic stress because they are prey and predator. And so for the dog, the dog is a predator, so therefore the cat is prey. So then the cat is living with a predator species, and they're in a constant state of stress. And so I think for people to have the skills that maybe whether shelter or at home, to know, okay, maybe they should be separated, maybe they should have some time apart. And also for a shelter environment, cats are creatures of comfort. They do not like to leave their environment because it causes them more stress. So what are some things like, you know, like, so I'm looking forward to your presentation, because you can talk about how we can create these restful environments for dogs and for kitty cats who maybe, like I said, can't leave the shelter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, this is why sometimes we say when new two species are being kind of introduced to each other, particularly for the first time in a home, whether you've rescued a dog or a cat into an already existing pet home, making sure that you're not introducing them for a few days, letting them settle, and then doing slow and steady introductions, which might be only 5 minutes to start with, and then building that time out when they start to feel more comfortable. It just allows them both to be successful in that habitat, rather than be like straight in, as you say, like into prey and predator kind of mode.
Yeah, and so that's one thing I think about, is that we always think, okay, let's do everything at once. Like you said, we're not always mindful, we're not always in the moment. We think, okay, we got to do this today, we got to do this today, we got to do this today. We're not thinking, okay, maybe that cat I just brought home needs to have a little bit of rest because it was stressed, or maybe this home is not familiar to the cat or the dog. And so having that rest for the dog that you're bringing home from a rescue is really important, because their entire home is completely unfamiliar to them.
Absolutely. And I think there's also some things that if there were the facility or the time for the caregivers in the shelters to facilitate it, working on things like a little bit of settle exercises on mats that then can be transferred into the home of the dog or the cat, can help create that bit of familiarity in the new space, but it also helps them to have the skill set of being able to just switch off, even if it's for a couple of minutes, because they've already learned how to do it. And so those are some skills that can be really useful and transferable from shelter to home.
Yeah, and that's why I love your Barket Club, Barket Place Club, because you have like these 3-week challenges that people can do, whether it's recall or settling or anything, that you kind of give people the tools that over the next 3 weeks, we're going to help your dog calm down.
Yeah, and I think it is all about, we're not saying that we want dogs who are switched off and doing nothing and not having any fun in life, but we want that are well-rested, well-rounded, just like we know that when we don't get enough rest or sleep, that we can have all kinds of health issues as well as emotional issues. It is so important that we have that balance in life. And I think if anybody can take one thing away from the talk that I gave, hopefully it is that balance is key in our dogs and cats' lives.
And I think that's really important. And that would be a great place to end, because I know you have things you have to do. And so we're going to be posting about her presentation date, but it will be between July 10th to 17th. And please, people, if you haven't got your early bird tickets, they're on sale until the end of this month. And also, I'm very excited for your presentation. So everything will be recorded for the presentation. And so if you miss it, don't worry, it'll be on my Thinkific platform. So I'm very excited. And if you haven't given Barket Place a follow, please give them a follow. Is there anything you want to mention before we end?
No, just excited to get started and to hear the other presenters as well. So thank you so much for inviting me to be part of it.
Yay. No, I'm very excited as well. There's so many very cool, interesting and knowledgeable people who are just trying to simplify things to help animal rescues. So I'm very excited. All right, we're gonna say goodbye for today. So just hold on for a moment and then I will end the recording. So